perspectives in Shamballa.
Hi, everybody. And what I was going to say is welcome to Shamballa. Michael and I have been visiting Shamballa while we've been waiting for you, and it's pretty hot in Shamballa at the moment. So maybe we better read about it a little more before we take steps in that direction. I trust you hear what I'm saying. I never know when I'm on and
You're good.
not quite on. Okay, that's good, Michael. So I just want to welcome you who have dared to come into the sacred precincts where Shamballa is influential. More and more, I think, in the Aquarian age, we're going to know about this tremendous center. Already, Helena and Nicholas Roerich, they knew plenty, and it's reflected in the art of Nicholas Roerich. So whenever we have a First Ray conference, we always try to emphasize the great Shamballa. Anyway, welcome Anna and Anne and Carl. Nice to see you all, and let's see what I got here. Catherine, hi, and Francois, Heike, and Jan. Welcome, Karen and Marina. Okay. Nice to see you. Martine Dupont, welcome. Nyanka, welcome. And Risto, hi. Good to see you again. And Vivian, yes, welcome. And Winnie, okay. Well, you know, I tried to do kind of a welcome in the beginning, and then if you join afterwards, just understand that I and all of the team on communications are happy that you are here. Now, when I look at this compilation, and I realize that somehow we've done 7 pages out of 560, it doesn't fill me with great optimism that we will be done before the year 2050, when the great decision time again rolls around. I think we could, you know, DK said, could there not be found a group that would make a serious study of Shamballa? And I'm not, you know, claiming that we are that group. We'd have to be working at it, I think, day and night, really. But we have some kind of presence within that presence. We are receiving and learning about a very difficult subject to which human beings don't really know how to respond. Now, do they know more now? Some, I don't know, 100 years later, 90 years later, do they know more? Maybe a bit more, perhaps, but certainly nothing in fulfillment. It's so misinterpreted, just the way the divine will is misinterpreted. I feel, you know, I knew a man. He just died just the other day. Some of you know him. He is Daniel Krummenacher. You know, when I think about Shamballa, he was 96 years old, a great friend of Masonry and of the ageless wisdom, and he climbed the Matterhorn by himself, just a solo climb when he was a younger man. And he's the type that would put on a helmet and go into the crater of a volcano, where we might say the influence of Shamballa under the Manu was quite active. Well, he lived a very full life, and all of us are grateful for that fearless first ray that he brought to the situation. There's not so many first ray monads, you know. When you look at the solar system, maybe there are 5 billion of them. Pardon me. But that is supposed to be compared with 20 billion third ray monads and 35, am I getting close there? 35 billion second ray monads in this largely Davic second ray system. So let's just say that developed first ray monads are rare. Yet they are coming, but since they came in late in the day, most of them, they haven't had a chance yet to develop the Shamballa impulse. And that will be particularly underdevelopment. Not underdeveloped, but under development in the next, or the red solar system. Do you plan to be around for that one? I think we will be around for that one, and we'll be given the opportunity to have an entirely new sense of values and to truly understand what divine will actually may be. Right now we're struggling with it, and the more we can work with a practical knowledge of the divine plan and study history, really, and I suppose study it the way that Blavatsky presented it, the more we will know about divine purpose and Shamballa. So are we up to that? Well, I think more and more we will have to be, because I've been reading reports, I'm sure you have too, that everywhere democracy seems to be under threat. The uniquely potent second ray method of governance is under threat, and a distortion of the idea of monarchy, which is shambolic in nature, is trying to take its place. But since people understand so little about the will and the purpose, they are bringing us a kind of monarchy which is based upon egotism, as I guess, up to this point, it mostly has been. And we have to study the will so that we don't, well, we can't say we won't allow that to happen, but our efforts will be strong in counteracting that distortion of divine purpose and divine will, which is characteristic of Shamballa when it is misunderstood. It's just so pitiful, really, to observe the selfish misunderstanding that so many people seem to have acquired, so many millions. But let's see, we'll do our job and hopefully help to bring things true and through into that era of peace when Satan, in this case, the rebellious human personality or lower ego will be bound for 1,000 symbolic years during the age of Aquarius. Well, let's take a look at what he's saying here. I think so many things have been going on. I think we missed maybe the last Shamballa opportunity here. Just we couldn't have the program for some reason. Good reason. The new forms are, however, being built, and the Shamballa potencies, plus, and we need it, hierarchical guidance, are working towards ends which are, note the words, definitely planned, and which are, he says, working out favorably. Okay, well, let's just say that Master DK and the other masters see beneath the surface, and they understand that what looks evident and is on the surface is not necessarily what's happening. Yeah, if we want to understand Shamballa, we have to have far more than a surface penetration of what we consider reality to be. So this is a kind of a spiritual discernment which we have to develop, and that, as we know, begins to happen on the third level of the higher mental plane. The potency of love wisdom transmitted by the hierarchy is playing upon modern humanity in a more intimate and close manner than ever before. Now, what that means, right, is that the great synthetic second ray, which subsumes, gathers together all the other 7 subrays, including the indigo subray of the major indigo ray, is really active. And right now, the will of God, our planetary logos and our solar logos, that will is the expression of divine love through the Christ, who, literally can, well, maybe it's symbolically, can walk in the door of Shamballa at any time when other people are just making claims, because he and the Buddha are focused on the high level of the logoic plane. And the Buddha always somehow with the number 8, which may mean that he can make journeys to the cosmic astral plane, one part of the 8 above and the other part of the 8 on the logoic plane. And the Christ is, well, I don't know, is he doing the same? But he is symbolically sitting at the right hand of the Father and is carrying the Shamballa force forward as it has to be carried forward now. Now that's maybe quite different from the way it will be carried forward in the next solar system, where we are told, and this is fascinating, that just as the principle of intelligence can act as a drag upon the expression of love wisdom, so in that future solar system, the principle of love wisdom can act as, I'll call it a drag, okay, can act as a drag or obstruction to the expression of the divine will. Now that really gives you pause, because here we are involved in trying to make love wisdom a reality, only to realize that the next, or red, solar system has to be careful about how that love energy is expressed, or the true divine will not be expressed as it should be. Okay, if someone has their yeah, wait a minute, so someone's got their sound on. You should turn your sound off. Otherwise, we're going to hear a lot of extra things. So the directors of the hierarchy are seeking to evoke an intelligent response from men, and women too, of course. It means manus, and an indication that they are conscious of what is happening. Hierarchy is always gauging the response of humanity, the true response to every possible step forward. And the thing about the Shamballa energy, it is the energy of progress onward. It is a directed straight line force. It moves in a straight line, not in the spiral cyclic or in the rotary line particularly. It moves in such a way as to go straight to the goal. So, okay, most of the response, okay, I really have to be grateful to Zach Rymill for making these compilations. He has emphasized very important things and done it in a way that we're not going to overlook it, you see. That's important, because you can read so much of the Tibetan and it just all begins to, blend together. But we need the particular references within any body of references which point to our subject, which is the Shamballa activity, basically. Okay. Now, take notes as you go, because we're going to stop and you'll have a chance to ask questions, since this, or make statements, since this is a Zoom kind of program. We can't do that on broadcasts, not yet, anyway. Most of the response, now think about this, to the Shamballa activity is characterized by fear and terror. Well, there's something built into the very substance of our planet which recoils from the direct impact of the Shamballa force. Fear, and I guess we all have it one way or another, is the great dweller on the threshold of our particular planet. It's in the animal kingdom. It's in the human kingdom. It's even in the plant kingdom. I think it would be harder to find in the mineral kingdom, because although there is mineral consciousness, it's closer to the Shamballa force, we might say. And the fear begins to dissipate when we start to enter the fifth kingdom of nature. I was with a friend, and he insisted that there were only three kingdoms, and that we human beings were simply animals, maybe of a higher kind. Well, I don't think that's where it's at for students of occultism. What we need is to make the transition into the kingdom of souls, and the plan energy and purpose energy is helping us do that. So, fear and terror. You're caught in the middle of a bombing. The V-2 rockets are in World War II coming overhead. And, sometimes there are direct hits. You wonder if you're going to be the one that's hit directly. Someone is hit directly. There's firestorms. I wonder what the people of Dresden, Germany felt when a huge storm of fire engulfed their city. Terror at the destruction of familiar forms. So fear and terror. By sensitivity and distressingly developed reactions to the forces of hate and separation. Remember Hitler and his, what was eventually called his evil gang. They did respond to the inverted Shamballa force without love. And they were responsible, well, the Black Lodge, it just rules by fear and terror. Fear and terror, and by sensitivity and distressingly developed reactions to the forces of hate and separation. Those forces, friends, are still stalking the earth and humanity. We know it. We've been allowed, because of DK's master teaching, to see a little more deeply into things, and we know that those forces are attempting to prevent so much that will be the wonder of the new age. And they do it through their ancient methods. Look at how many people today are afflicted by hatred, by separation, because they are fearful and terrorized and they don't even know it. It's a sad thing, and it has to be countered. Only a few, here and there, really grasp the vision of the future and realize what is going on, says the Tibetan, seeing truly the beauty of the emerging plan. And may I ask, are we among those who grasp that future and see the beauty of the emerging plan? Well, look on a different ray altogether. And before long, after 2025, we are going to be offered a new renaissance, a new rebirth, and the beauty of the emerging plan will stand clearly before the eyes of those who can see. DK says, such will be the nature of this renaissance that the great cathedrals, which have been constructed, let us say, throughout Europe and elsewhere, will look like child's building blocks by comparison to what will be offered And what about the music, or the dance, or any of the arts, or thought for that matter? We are heading into a time of wonder if we can simply penetrate through and beyond the obvious. It is with these few, the Tibetan says, that the members of the hierarchy can work. I guess we better hope that we're among those few. It would be great to do the Master's work. Like Master Moria says, it is a joy to do the Master's work. One of his great mantrams, which I think, heartens everybody who takes it to heart. So these few, only a few, really have this sense of the emerging of a great possibility. And can work because they, even when lacking understanding, and this is so important, think of it, excuse me, bear no ill will or hatred to others. They are usable by hierarchy, because the principle of love, which at the present time is the will of God, is active in them, and they bear no ill will or hatred towards others. That ends up being, so important, right? So very important. I'm just trying to get a little bit of trying to emphasize that, because this is the principle of love. And sometimes we might say to ourselves, well, what has love to do with will? But in our present solar system and on our planet with its second ray soul, love has everything to do with the present expression of divine will. Love is the great unifier and further interpreter. Now, there's an old song, I don't know, is it in the classical era? It's called Love Has Eyes. And basically, when one loves, one sees more, much more, than when one stands back and coldly analyzes a situation. Well, that analysis may be necessary, but if it's not accompanied by loving regard, by loving understanding, the depth of possible relation, or revelation, rather, it just cannot reach us. The energy of love, says DK, is primarily concentrated for purposes of hierarchical activity in the new group of world servers. Now, we all know that we've been told, okay, that around the year 2025, a number of the ashrams changed positions, and they were elevated onto the Buddhic plane, and it was then that the new group of world servers could be created. Think of it, it is new. Sometimes we just say, okay, world servers, but No, this is a new movement within the upper echelons of humanity and allows love and vision in a new way. The Tibetan goes on to say, this group has been chosen by the hierarchy as its main channel of expression. So may I say, I think we see that if we actually succeed in becoming an active member, a contributing member of the new group of world servers, the hierarchy is working through us, and that is no small matter. DK goes on, this group, composed as it is of all world disciples and all working initiates, well, a world disciple can even be considered to be an initiate, and then we go on higher, still, working initiates. When he uses that word work, we have to pay attention. There's a message in it. It's composed of all world disciples and all working initiates, finds its representatives in every group of idealists, the true idealist, not the narrow idealist, and servers in every body of people who express human thought. So DK is always inclusive when he describes what idealism is and should be. A true idealism will take us into the courts of Shamballa on the second subplane of the cosmic physical plane. So they express human thought, particularly in the realm of human betterment and uplift. And we see a lot of that today. We see political parties and individuals who really want something better for everybody. And we see those who are so selfish, they just don't care. And, you know, who is it then that is really following the divine will? Who is it that has the welfare of the people in mind? Now, that drama is playing out all over the world, and especially in the United States now. Going on through them, that is, through the servers, the potency of love, wisdom can express itself. These people are frequently misunderstood. Now, you know, if you're going to do your job, get ready for misunderstanding directed to you from all angles. It will happen. And when I see some of these, thank you. When I see some of these parents attacking those who want their children to be safe in school simply because they want to preserve their adolescent independence, I know that when you work for the good, you will be misunderstood. The Christ said to his disciples in the closing days, they will persecute you for my sake. And indeed they did. And so many of the disciples lost their incarnation through that persecution. I think that there was a certain John, St. John, who did not, and he brought through the book of Revelation under the Kabbalistic guidance of another essentially first-rate type who became Master Hilarion. That is, Paul, or, later the church dignified him with the idea of Saint Paul. But that John was escaped what so many of the others had to go through for the Christ's sake. So these people, and that's who we are to a certain extent, get ready for it then, right, are frequently misunderstood for the love which they express differs widely from the sentimental, affectionate, personal interest of the average worker. Well, it's hard to explain the difference between the two types of love. One is so very personal and passes, in the case of most people, for love, and they don't understand the love that is combined with divine will. So DK goes on, they are occupied mainly with the interests and the good of the whole group. What? The greatest good of the greatest number, right? With which they may be associated, and they are not primarily concerned with the petty interests of the individual, occupied with his little problems and concerns. Well, we can judge ourselves accordingly. Where do we stand? Are we in that great flow of purpose and plan, or are we confined to what ultimately is a kind of pettiness? I guess, we can't really avoid some of that, but we can outgrow it. So this brings, this is somehow a good section. It tells us what we'll have to face when we attempt to carry out as much of the divine purpose as we can express through our small part of the divine plan. This brings such a server under the criticism of the individual, and with this criticism they must learn to live, and to it they must pay no attention. I'm remembering what DK said. Well, he said so many things, but he said, they say, what do they say? Let them say. So we learn, have we learned, when we are criticized, to pay no attention. We live with it because, the people doing that kind of criticism are still early in their development of working with the plan and so forth. Certainly not working with divine purpose, though the solar logos can bring good out of evil. That's for sure. But pay it no, never mind, as they say in slang, don't pay attention to it. Well, easier said than done, and that's part of the discipline of impersonality as it shows itself in the first ray, when first ray impersonality is not being distorted into coldness and hardness. True group love is of more importance than personal relationships, though those are met as need. Note, I say need arises. And the Tibetan did that. Maybe he had certain intentions when he began his work with what eventually turned out to be about 50 disciples. He says, I'm going to speak with you totally directly, not going to concentrate on your personal issues, etc., etc. But he discovered there was a need. They had a need. And so he took that need in stride, and he lowered his method a little bit so that he could deal with these personal factors which were so obstructive in the life of his disciples. Even how people were exercising or not, or eating what was good for them or not. Things really having to do with the astral body and the etheric physical body. We expect him to deal with things dealing with the mind, but he had to deal so much with how people were going about their ordinary life on the physical and astral planes. Why? Because there was a need. So keep that word need in mind. Need. Then the personal relationships, if they are related to need, can really be justified. Going on with the Tibetan, disciples learn to grasp the need of group love and to amend their ways in conformity with group good. But this is not easy for thee, and here he's going to he's going to describe us. This is not easy for the self-interested individual to grasp the difference. Mending our ways, amending our ways. Notice the word amen is in that word, even though DK is a little bit hard on the effects of the word amen, which he likens, you may have read, to a strong wind pinning a man against the wall. In other words, it takes away your freedom, whereas the Om guarantees that, the right use of the sacred word. So who needs the love? Well, the group has great need of group love, and I'm sure we all have a lot to do to make sure that we can provide the group with our love and keep it from being so personal. Through the medium of those disciples who have learned the distinction between the petty, you'll see that word often, the petty concerns of the individual, plus his interest in himself, and the necessities and urgencies of group work and love, the hierarchy can work. And a serious question for all of us: are we so living our particular incarnation that the hierarchy can actually work through us? So there is a discrimination on the fourth subplane of the mental plane to be made, a discrimination between petty concerns and self-interests and the necessities and even urgencies of group work and group love. So the hierarchy can work and so bring about the needed world changes. And this is important at the present time. The present world changes are primarily changes in consciousness. Now, there are some people who suspect that consciousness is no very real thing. It's just an epiphenomenon of matter, like no brain, no consciousness. Of course, that point of view will be corrected. DK goes on. I have dealt somewhat in detail with these matters. The gist of them has, however, been embodied in the pamphlets sent out over the past few years. He was quite a pamphleteer, and he meant to reach the general public. And then point number 3, the major energy upon which we shall touch here is that of intelligent activity. Now, it's the third point, and it's the third ray, the potency of the third ray. DK says, this finds its expression, and this is important for us, through the third major center on the planet, and this center we call humanity. Well, it may be that the higher strata of humanity finds its way into the Ajna center of Sanat Kumara, but the average human being is part of this throat center and is part of intelligence and the third ray. So head center, Ajna center, throat center, heart center, all of these are of importance as we begin to think about what it really means to serve the divine plan under the divine purpose where possible. Remember what it takes, even in hierarchy, to divine the divine purpose. The Manu, the Mahachohan, and the Bodhisattva. 3 6th or 7th degree initiates poised to understand what is the plan as it relates to divine purpose. And there are so many masters who cannot do that. But we can begin to be more intelligent about it and more loving. DK goes on to say, the evocation of a loving, intelligent, notice how he combines the first two aspects, or maybe the third and the second aspect. The evocation of a loving, intelligent response to the Shamballa impulse. Now, he did not say impact, because those Shamballa impacts are few and far between, and they affect humanity so profoundly. But the impulse is the tendency for Shamballa to appear in the plan-related doings and thinkings of people who are ready. So let's think. The evocation of a loving, intelligent response to the Shamballa impulse, stepped down by the hierarchy. Without that love, wisdom, a direct Shamballa impact, some of which is being attempted, of course, can be quite disastrous and loveless. So anyway, the Shamballa impulse stepped down by the hierarchy is that to which this world center should respond. That's us. We are the world center that should begin to respond to a loving, intelligent response to the Shamballa impulse. And this is rapidly, words of good cheer here, this is rapidly and, as I have told you, satisfactorily happening in the eyes of the masters who can see beyond the obvious confusion and destruction. It is happening. A definite world effect is being produced. And the new group of world servers has given much aid in this, in all these different modes of expression, through all the 10 seed groups as they are slowly being organized. The new group of world servers has been active. They have we, interpreted, explained, and assisted the process of evoking the latent love. Latent, it's often hiding. The latent love in human beings, which, in its initial and unformed stages, exists in the form of an inchoate goodwill. It's not a perfectly honed and directed goodwill. It's still somewhat formless, but at least this love appears at first as goodwill. Now, we have to ask ourselves again, am I a person of goodwill? It's because there are many who just are not. I call this to your attention as the underlying motivating idea behind all the work which you are called upon to do. Yeah, it is that. The goodwill is the underlying motivating idea of all the work that we are called upon to do. I suggest, he says, therefore, that you endeavor to see the three major ideologies with which you have perforce to deal in terms of the three efforts which are emanating from the three planetary centers at this time: the Shamballa, the hierarchy, and humanity. And well, I think we know what he's going to say. You will thus gain a more synthetic viewpoint and a deeper understanding of the slowly emerging world picture. Okay, well, we just do a little bit at a time, but hopefully we do it in some kind of order, and with the result that we absorb something. So we're on page 22 of, I think, The Destiny of the Nations, and I'm going to just copy this, and meanwhile, starting on page 19, okay, we're going to talk about these three centers. Naturally, the center to which we are immediately called upon to respond is hierarchy. At first, since we make such a bad job of responding to hierarchy, we might as well start there. So today is the 10th of October, and our next occasion, I don't know if anybody has that when we're meeting again, but it'll be program number 7. Whoop, the British pound is not what I want. Not what I want. I want that. So maybe someone will look that up. I always should look it up, but it'll probably be in October sometime next. It's only the 10th. And by the way, you know,
Michael?
yeah, Michael,
Yeah,
yes.
The next one is October 24th.
Okay, very good. And thank you. Well, you know, it is Columbus Day, almost Columbus Day. For some, this has meant a great ideal of discovery and subsequent conquest. For others, it has been oppression, enslavement, and the beginning of abuse in the New World. I was very interested to see that the president introduced the theme of the importance of Columbus Day as a holiday for the indigenous people in America, and did not continually look at the idea that we are losing Columbus Day because so many immigrants are coming in to the melting pot, which the United States is meant to be, even as Great Britain, with its second-rate soul, is meant to be. It's a big change of perception, and not welcomed by the selfish, who, really don't care whether people of color get a fair break in living their lives. The selfishness is really emerging, and pretty soon it will be impossible to know, or not to know, let's say, where it comes from. Already we can see where it comes from. I listened to a news commentator today. He's a very sober and straight man with a lot of first ray, and he says it's all simply evil. There's no way we can describe it except as evil. Now, for the newscasters to begin to throw around those words, someone is really beginning to mean business. It's true. It's part of the battle between good and evil. I mean, you can write philosophy books on what is evil, and here is Madame Blavatsky's friend, that certain Anna Kingsford, who, in a long footnote in Cosmic Fire, wrote about the whole problem of evil as kind of a channeled writing, and one of those writings that you expect actually was brought down from a higher source. But we have to learn how to call things by their proper name. And that will be a wake-up call to many people who just don't consider the welfare of the other person because of superficial reasons, and because these other people have not had all the advantages that have accrued to literally white men in some of these Western cultures. But the Lord of the world, he has plans, and in the sixth root race, we're told that all of humanity will turn a beautiful golden shade of yellow, kind of a golden brown, radiant color, and that'll be for everybody. And so a homogeneity will overtake us, and we will have gone beyond this discrimination so common to the fifth ray and the first ray, where everybody is different from everybody else, and some people are preferred and some people are considered undesirable. Now, all of that is part of the work of Shamballa as well. Okay, friends. Now, let's see. Michael, are you in a position to help us if there's anybody that would like to say something?
Yes, I am. If anybody wants to talk directly, you could raise your hand. If not, you can put your questions in the chat and I'll read them.
Right. I know it's sometimes hard to know what our point of entry shall be, but people like ourselves are also treading the path of will as well as the path of love. And that makes a difference. Let's see, I think that's where we are. Where are we? Always losing my way here. It's going to tell us about Hercules and Yeah, all that's coming up. And when you live a life under Shamballa, even quite a weak impact of what that energy is, everything changes. You are empowered by the divine plan as it reflects divine purpose. Is there anybody that would like to say anything or write something?
And Parker just asked, could you say a little more about the nature of the misunderstandings you mentioned?
The nature of the what?
The misunderstandings, but
Well, you know, and if someone takes away our toys, we're not happy about it. If something comes along which shatters our attachment to limitation or our attachments to many limitations, we're still not happy about it. We don't realize that the Shamballa force, the Shamballa impulses, are coming in as agents of liberation. Now think of the three great lords in Shamballa, who we've characterized as liberty, equality, and fraternity, or maybe in proper order it would be liberty, fraternity, and equality, but we're so used to hearing it the other way. We have our attachments, and we're perfectly happy, so many of us, with them. We have our religion. We have our political party. We have our economic status. We don't want to share. We don't want to share because it can mean a reduction in that status at first, maybe not eventually, because we care about the other person. So when something comes along and blasts away, oftentimes the Tibetan uses the term blasts them wide open and takes us away from the grip that we have upon many binding conditions. We misunderstand that force as taking something away from us, when in fact it is restoring something essential to us which we have forgotten. So everything's upside down, you know. We're told that there is an inversion of sight in relation to the astral plane. Things look upside down. The liberating factors look like the enslaving factors, and the enslaving factors look as if they are liberative. Now, we have to get rid of our glamours in order for us to correct that situation. So I don't know how long it will take. Look, in esoteric psychology too, there's a section on advanced methods of meditation, isolated unity, inclusive reason, presented attributes. And I'm just looking at presented attributes for a moment. The Tibetan, the Buddha is said to have presented to humanity the factor of wisdom. maybe, I don't know, maybe a little bit more easy to absorb than the factor of love which has been presented by the Christ to humanity. And St. Paul, or Paul, who took the place of Judas Iscariot, he is said to have offered humanity its first flickering sense of synthesis. So, in these presented attributes, they've hardly been tried, and yet they are the third ray method. So, if those are misunderstood and not yet adapted to our human expression, just imagine what could be the case with the Shamballa force, as it apparently breaks up the things that you love, as it apparently takes you away from the things to which you are attached, and by means of which you have confined your consciousness. So we'll come to a greater understanding of what liberation is. Remember, so many of us are treading the fixed cross of blinding light. Can't be too comfortable. It's Taurus. Fiery pain. That's the Leo factor we have to face. Bitter woe. That's so scorpionic. This deep suffering and remorse over how life is going. It's a profound state of sadness. Again, with Scorpio, it's got a lot of first ray in it, and it insists that human beings let go. Always a hard thing to do, but then we get to Aquarius and we find it is the sign of liberation. And yet the sign of liberation. And then maybe we begin to understand a little bit, because Aquarius, it is a fifth ray sign, yes, but it has a lot to do with the first ray. And I think behind Aquarius, a certain first ray, unnamed, subtle constellation exists. So when we're used to giving up the non-essential for the essential, we will no longer misunderstand divine purpose and the Shamballa impulse so thoroughly. It's a big subject. Thank you. Anything else?
Nothing else. No hands and no other questions. Just a thank you for man.
Well, think of it, friends. You're on the path of liberation. And you are on the path which is going to help others become liberated. And they don't want to be liberated. And we hardly understand what it really means. But the Shamballa impulse is helping us understand what liberation really is, what it is that this Lord in Shamballa is doing among the three great lords, or what Sanat Kumara having both the first and second ray is doing, or our solar logos, our planetary logos, having the first ray monad and what it is doing, and what Uranus with its first ray monad is doing. Gradually, we're going to learn to appreciate that which liberates us. Now, sometimes it's a question of being liberated from the body, you know, and people say, I don't want to die, okay? But if they learn, and, you know, we can try that in Dina to fall asleep consciously, they can spend a lot of free conscious time out of the body, not just in the dream state, but in the conscious, lucid dreaming state. And through practice, they accept their impending liberation of leaving the body behind. So it's not like we have to wait till we're on the door of death to begin practicing some of these suggestions. We can begin even now, coming closer to what is the real meaning of liberation, and then we will understand better what's going on in Shamballa. And for us, at least, the Shambhala impulse will not be so misunderstood. Anything, friends, anything else?
Still nothing else. They're profoundly impressed.
Well, let's just say, you know, yes, but we have to have the courage to get into those, to find the major questions. You know, to ask the right questions is to, is to inquire the way. And in white magic, you find that the 4 techniques that will make of you a master, and inquiring the way is the very first one. So we can always say, and we do, well, what do I know? I don't know any of this. We can always say that. Or we can say, but really, what would I like to know? What am I deeply, profoundly curious about, but it's hard to talk about? What things are they? And then we take the risk of stating or of asking. Okay. Well, okay, we will continue.
Catherine says, thank you for telling us about Daniel. And Anna says, liberation of the soul from personality by the understanding the need to surrender to the soul, its love and light.
Yes, and yes, Daniel among us was a powerful force, and I think in his newly liberated condition, he'll be even more helpful. And when it comes to surrender, it's connected with Pisces, and it might shock us to realize that surrender to the divine will is really a first ray act. As the Christ discovered, how difficult it was in the Garden of Gethsemane to surrender to the true anchoring of the true will of God. He struggled with it, and we'll never know, or at least not now, the reasons for that struggle. But I imagine it was hard, and the Tibetans said the Christ, as the head of the hierarchy, had already worked out a theme, a method of saving humanity, as that's what the second ray initiates do, only to discover something coming down from Sanat Kumara, which forced the Christ to say, not my will, Father, but thine be done. And what an important moment that was for all of humanity in terms of anchoring the divine will. Now we're still very much in the process of carrying that forward. We are by no means fully anchored in divine will. And we'll learn more and more, if we care enough, how we can do that. Okay, friends, I think maybe that will be enough for right now. There's a lot to absorb, and you probably realize that whatever the Tibetan says, now this is a compilation in which the term Shamballa is frequently mentioned, so that's good. But we can interpret many things, the Tibetan says, in terms of the will of Shambhala and the purpose of Sanat Kumara and the still greater purpose of the solar god. We can give it a kind of slant that emphasizes those particular factors, no matter what we are reading about. So I'm trying to help us do that, and I know that you can do the same. So all of us here on the communications team, Tui and myself and Michael Crow and BL and Joe and Michael Stacy and Bob Basil and many others that help at conference time, we are wishing you lots of love and many blessings. And during the coming few years, the deep assimilation of the teaching, so that we can really be of assistance in anchoring the Tibetans' third installment of teaching, which I suspect will have a lot of the first ray in it. Blavatsky was first ray, but she was very historical, if you will. Where do you get a better idea about the long-term history of our planet? Alice Bailey, doubtless, was on the second ray, and hers was a whole psycho-spiritual presentation. I expect we're going to learn more about the first ray in the bridging efforts of the Tibetan coming up now very shortly. So this will be up on Makara. I kind of owe you quite a few programs. I have not, for many reasons, had time to complete them. But they'll be put up on Makara, and those that can be put up on YouTube will be put up on YouTube. So for the time being, let's just forge ahead with this energy of progress onward of the first ray. And I'm going to turn off our recording, and then Michael will turn off the whole program, and we'll get all of this to you as soon as we possibly can. All the best, and talk to you soon. Okay, bye-bye.